Welcome to Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk to practicing attorneys about their lives in and out of the practice of law. I'm Louis Goodman, the host of the show, and yes, I'm a lawyer. Nobody's perfect. She was born and raised in Oakland, California. She grew up in a family of lawyers. She is a state-certified criminal specialist since 2007. She has tried over 50 cases to jury verdict, including serious felonies and homicides. And she rescues pit bulls. Annie Beles, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to chat with you, and I'm looking forward to it.
Where's your office located?
We are in the Ordway building right down near the lake in Oakland, adjacent to the actual corner of Lake Merritt, with a view from the 23rd floor.
Sounds good. What kind of practice do you have there?
So we have I do almost only active criminal cases, some appellate. We have 2 appellate specialists in our office that do post-conviction relief. And then we also have 2 immigration lawyers because we started, because of the dovetail between helping people that are in need, are in a little bit of trouble. And so we went into immigration probably right around 2007, 2008.
How many attorneys are in the firm altogether?
At the moment, we have 6. It's vacillated between 5 and 10 throughout my career, and we got a good crew going, and 6 wonderful staff members, and so we try to get the job done even during COVID-19.
Where did you go to high school?
I am a proud graduate of Holy Names High School in Oakland. That is an all-girls Catholic school. It was instead of Oakland High at the time, and both my sisters graduated from there as well.
What was that experience like for you?
Well, I think Holy Names offered each young woman a different benefit. And I think that one of the benefits for me was that it was a absolutely fabulous education, a good group of girls.
Where did you go to college?
I went to UC Santa Cruz primarily because it was close and I could come home periodically, even on the Greyhound bus over the hill. I was already working in the office, and I remember coming home during summers and sometimes when my dad was in trial during the year to continue to help out in the office.
So you've been working in the legal field for really quite some time.
Yeah, I started when I was 15. I'm 48 now, and I did everything. I answered the phones, I did the filing, I did the courier work, I did, and it became greater responsibility as I got older, but I think it was really important to know what the nuts and bolts of how an office works and what a lawyer needs, and so that I could put that into my practice when I became a lawyer.
Do you feel it was kind of a natural progression to go into the practice of law in your dad's office?
No, surprisingly not. I mean, I had a wonderful group of, I would call them aunts and uncles when my dad was in the PD's office, and he left in 1980 when I was 8. I didn't want to be a lawyer when I grew up. I wanted to be and am a writer. And it was kind of funny how I ended up going into law school. I came home, I was in England my junior year. I went to the University of Exeter for junior year abroad. And I came home for Christmas, and I was sitting there watching football with my dad. And my dad said, "So Annie, what's the plan here? You know, what are you doing when you graduate?" This is the middle of junior year. I said, "Well, Dad, I think I might teach, and I'm going to write." And Dad, in his being an attorney many years, turned to me and said, "Well, what are you going to write about?" And I thought, "Oh, blank. What am I going to write about? I'm only 20 years old. Let me try this law school thing." And law school was not wonderful, I didn't think, but becoming a lawyer was the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Wow. Where did you go to law school?
I went to USF, and I went directly from college, graduated in June from college and started in August at USF, lived at home for the first year, worked probably far too much throughout my time in law school. And I really looked at it as a way to get my ticket so I could practice law. The intellectual pursuits were interesting, but I knew in my heart that corporations was only going to be a course I needed for the bar.
So going to law school for you was kind of a means to an end because you really were already practicing law.
Yes, I was already in the groove. I was already preparing cases for my dad, doing filings, doing motion writing. and I really just wanted the ticket. And I remember my first court appearance like it was yesterday, and that's what I wanted to do, was be in the courtroom and help my clients, help people when they are in sometimes the worst trouble of their lives.
Yeah, I really remember my first court appearance as well. When you actually started practicing as an attorney, as opposed to just being someone who was working in the office, how did that change for you?
Well, the responsibility changes because I think lawyers, defense lawyers, do this for different reasons. And one of the reasons I found throughout the years is that I really want to take care of people. And so the responsibility of being the actual lawyer is total responsibility. It's not saying, okay, I'll get you this filing, or I'll do this partial job. It's taking on the client and their families in its entirety. And that responsibility is an awesome honor. And that's really how it changed from being a staff member to being a lawyer.
You are now trying some very serious felony cases on a regular basis. How did you get from being a brand new lawyer to the point of lawyer who handles really serious cases?
Well, the office has always had a lot of cases, and needless to say, my dad, and thankfully, threw me in the deep end of the pool. I had been prepping up homicide cases. One I remember very clearly was when I was a freshman, was a potential death penalty case for my dad. So I knew the organizational skills, and so my dad gave me big cases. And my first felony trial was actually a life exposure. It was the first Prop 21 minor charged as an adult directly, which is, the law has since changed, thankfully. But that, you go in the deep end of the pool and you learn to swim. And then I decided, I think it was in 2009, to also take on some court appointed cases, because I think that's important for our community. And I just took the big ones. I've had a lot of very serious felonies. I think I've only tried 5 misdemeanors. Although I enjoy trying the misdemeanors just as much as I enjoy trying the felonies. They're just not 4 months long.
What is it you really like about practicing law?
I like the mental engagement with the law. For instance, just this morning, I'm looking at warrants that are based upon new technology and trying to figure out how to attack them or assail them if I can. I also really like the personal relationships that we have with our clients, with their families. I really want to know who my clients are, and I want to be able to help them in their unique position. There's a social aspect as well. I like being in court. I like speaking with other lawyers about their experiences. It's one of the last human professions.
If a young person, were thinking about a career choice, would you recommend becoming a lawyer?
Oh, that is a very interesting question. I have an 18-year-old niece who has asked me this, and I think I would, but I would also caution people that it is not for the faint of heart. Yeah, criminal defense, especially when you're dealing with the heavy, violent cases, accusations of heinous crimes, and you take that on, and you see things that you didn't really think was lawyering. I mean, one of my favorite things about, and I knew this, but I was talking to my niece. My niece said, do you go out to lunch with other lawyers? And I can't tell you how many times I've been in trial out of town, kind of eating a power bar on my knee in the front seat of my car with the air conditioning on and the yellow pad on the other knee, trying to get my cross-examination going. So it's a tough job, and I do recommend it because of the satisfaction that you get from helping people. But I also warn people that it is not the easiest job in the world.
What, if anything, would you change about the way the legal system works?
Well, I would change a lot of things. I think that we're moving in the right direction. I think that, for instance, there's a Senate bill about dealing with peremptory challenges. That's near and dear to my heart. I would very much give discretion to judges. That's also been changing with some of the gun use enhancements. One hopes that it would change with some of these mandatory sentences regarding sexual offenses. And I would try to really inject, without being too much of a hippie about it, inject the idea of compassion from all perspectives, from the deputy in the courtroom who calls my client a body instead of an inmate or a client. Try to humanize this whole situation from both perspectives, from the prosecution's perspective and humanizing their victims and or their victims' families, but really inject compassion into the whole system so that we are operating with critical thinking skills and in a compassionate manner when we are in crisis.
Do you think that the legal system is fair and that it dispenses justice?
Shortly, no. Not all, no. I think that there are problems that are in society that I don't that that come that manifest within the legal system. I mean, we have systemic racism, we have mass incarceration issues, we have prosecutorial discretion issues, we have the variance of county to county. I mean, a simple DUI here in Alameda County is going to be treated very differently, let alone more serious crimes. And I don't think that it is entirely fair. Does it dispense justice? Sometimes. And one time somebody asked me, where are the scales of justice even? Where are they actually even the way that they're supposed to be? And my joke, I guess I should just confess this, is that they are flat and even and straight in the tattoo that I have on my back of the scales of justice. But other than that, they're tipped very often against people of lower socioeconomic status, people of color. We really have problems. I know I know a lot of people are trying, but no, I don't think that I can say that it's fair and it dispenses justice over. That's why we have defense attorneys standing up against the government.
What made you decide to get that tattoo?
I got it in law school and I thought about it for about 2 years. Again, I'm telling young people that I think that you should have a waiting period before you get a tattoo. And I realized at that point in law school that this was what I was going to do. And when I write, I will be probably writing about my experiences, the stories that I've heard. But this justice thing is my calling and has been for the last 21 years as a lawyer.
Now, you've mentioned your dad several times already in this interview, and your dad, Bob Beles, is a very well-known and well-respected attorney in his own right, and I'm sure that he is one of your great mentors. And I'm wondering if there are any other people who have been mentors to you along the way.
Well, I think of mentoring. There have been so many. There have been so many. The first that comes to mind are the aunts and uncles from the public defender's office. Just seeing Arlene West, just seeing Cece Blackwell as female attorneys was inspirational, and that made it okay. Penny Cooper, Chris Argatis, that made it okay to be a woman lawyer. And then the uncles that were around made it okay to talk about law, that at parties, etc. I also, on a more personal level, I think that Kim Kupfer, who she and I worked a couple potential death penalty cases together when she a couple of years back. And she's just been an incredible inspiration throughout the years. But my dad and my mom are the initial mentors. I would also say that we get mentoring, or I have gotten mentoring, not we. I have gotten mentoring throughout my times in the courts. Bill Lenahan, I just went to his memorial, sadly, and he used to whisper wisdom to me when we would sit in the jury box just about a certain issue. Dick Moore of the DA's office taught me more about sentencing when I watched him do DNSs in Department 11 than I think any book or any other lawyer could have. So I tried to glom onto, I tried to imbibe all of the mentoring and information I could from that whispered wisdom you hear in the courtroom when somebody's talking about their case. So I've been real lucky that I've had a lot of people influence me and lift me up in terms of knowledge and experience. So I've been very, very lucky.
And just to let you know, I've had people tell me how they've looked up to you and considered you a great mentor to them in their careers.
Well, Louis, that makes me extremely happy. Really, I believe in this community, and I think that we are better lawyers when we talk to one another. I am a better lawyer when I talk to someone who's been a lawyer for 6 months or someone who's been a lawyer for 52 years, and that means a lot to me that people would think of me as a mentor. I take on that role as much as I can.
Yeah, and I also just want to I personally thank you, and I think I speak for a lot of us when people post to that Alameda Defenders email group with a question. You're always right there. You have information, you have good information, and you're just very, very generous with your time and your knowledge when you post there. And I see it all the time.
Well, thank you. I try to be responsive, and I think it's just important. There are people that are sitting in their home offices before COVID and during COVID, and they're by themselves, and we can't go into the courts during COVID and say, how do I get this onto calendar? What do I do to file a motion? And the individuality of being a lawyer is never going to suffer by sharing experience and knowledge with other people. It's just not. We're better. I mean, I think that lawyers, especially defense attorneys, should stick together, and that will raise up our representation of our clients. So I try to be responsive when I can, and I do my weekly inspiration.
I know you do your weekly inspiration, and I was just getting to that because, as a matter of fact, today you posted something by someone named Earl Nightingale. Let me just read it. It says, "We are at our very best, and we are happiest when we are fully engaged in work we enjoy on the journey toward the goal we've established for ourselves. It gives meaning to our time off and comfort to our sleep. It makes everything else in life so wonderful, so worthwhile." And I think that's true.
It did speak to me, and I actually don't know who Mr. Nightingale is. When I do my work the best I can, then I do feel like I left it all on the field, and that I can go back to the locker room knowing I did my best. And I think inspiration, well, it may be a softer assistance than, how to file a motion or do you have a case on this issue. I think we all need to be buoyed up and lifted up when we're practicing this kind of law.
Tell me a little bit about your family life.
So I met my wonderful husband when I was 14 playing football on Lakeshore and eating donuts at Colonial Donuts. And then we dated for a while and then re-met when I was 32 and have been together ever since. So almost 16 years now. We got married in 2012 and we have no children, but we have 2 rescue pit bulls. Matt and I live in an area where we find dogs, unfortunately, that have been fought or hurt or abandoned. And one of our dogs we got from death row at the shelter. That's Bodie. And he had an execution date, and we kind of kidnapped him, essentially. And we had to do an interview. I do have to tell the story. We had an interview to find out whether or not we would be good parents. And Matt had been a dog owner his whole life almost, but I had not. And the woman took me aside and said, "Do you understand, that pit bulls are not well liked?" And I said, "Well, yes. And I understand that. Are you ready to be a pit bull owner?" I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Do you understand that people are going to hate you if you walk down the street with a pit bull?" And it took everything in my power not to say, people hate me because I represent people accused of crime on a regular basis. I'm kind of used to that idea. And the other one we found literally on a trail and just couldn't give her up. And so we kept her and we live in Oakland. My husband is also from Oakland and well, his dad is from Oakland and he was from Piedmont. So we enjoy our time here and travel when we can.
Well, I suppose most of your travel has taken place in the before times. Any places that you've really enjoyed going to?
Yes, we try to go to Kauai, where I have family, and Ireland, where actually Matt is my husband. My husband's mother lived there when we got together the second time around. And so those are the two places that we've been the most. We used to travel to the Southwest to visit my in-laws as well. But Kauai, Ireland, and Arizona were the big ones.
What sort of recreational pursuits do you have when you're not actually practicing law?
Oh, am I supposed to have those?
Well, I don't know. I mean, some people have a little work-life balance. Maybe you don't. It probably makes you a better lawyer.
No, I'm not. I'm joking. No, I don't have, like a absolute hobby, but I have I read a lot. That has always been my thing is reading. I read nonfiction and fiction. I walk the dogs. I love to garden, and I have my funny little things that I try to think are going to be my next hobby. I started knitting, and I realized that after a long day's work, and knitting was not the most relaxing at first. It took a while to learn how to do it, but I knit here and there, and and I cook. So, but I don't think that I would be the example of the greatest work-life balance.
If you couldn't be a lawyer, is there some other profession that you could think of doing?
Well, I would like to be a teacher and a writer. That was the goal back before the famous football conversation with my dad when I was 20. So that's probably what I would do.
Let's say you came into some real money, a couple of $1 billion fell into your lap. What, if anything, would you do differently?
I would take a couple months off. Thank you very much. No, I would take a couple months off and I would somehow try to get the Oakland public schools funded appropriately across all districts. That would be a huge goal for me. I would probably want to buy a home in both Kauai and in Ireland. And then I would probably come back and try a couple cases a year. Not as many as I do now, not at the pace that I do. But I've said that to clients before, or potential clients. And I've said, if I won the lottery, I probably would still try these cases because I think that that's part of who I am. But I would take time to write, but I don't think that I would stop practicing law entirely. And schools, fund the schools.
Yeah, well, I think that you're happiest when you're fully engaged in your work.
I am.
What if you had a magic wand, you could change one thing in the world, legal or otherwise? What would that be? What would the one thing, if you could change it, be?
I think I'd go back to, I guess it's two things. Giving humanity, all people, critical thinking skills and compassion. The world would be a better place if we use our critical thinking skills and compassion in every way, in every profession, in every interaction at the grocery store, everything. If we had critically thought and were compassionate with one another, the world would be a different place.
Is there any one case that you can think about that comes to mind that you think went really well, where you feel like, wow, this was like really what being a lawyer is about?
Yeah, I think I can think of one where I got an acquittal and the man has a very successful career and made sure to send me, a photograph of his wedding a couple years later, sends me a Christmas card every year. That one stands out. Anyone where the client walks back into my office, which I've had a number of, and that's I say that because most of my clients with the serious cases are in custody when I'm representing them. Many of them are, I shouldn't say most. And many of them are facing enormous amounts of time in custody. So to be able to walk into my office after I've represented them is a real pleasure.
Yeah, that is a good feeling, isn't it?
It really is. And to know that they're successful and that the that the starfish that I threw back in the sea through my work, hopefully, or whatever I contributed to it, was able to thrive and come back into society, and that's been a real pleasure.
Annie, I understand you've got a poster on the wall in your office of a starfish. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the story that I read, and I don't know who it's attributed to, the poster that I have has the starfish and the story is that a young girl, was walking down a beach, and there were thousands and thousands of starfish on that beach out of the water and ailing and dying. And she was picking one up at a time and threw it in the water. And an older man came by and said, "Oh, young woman, what are you doing?" And she said, "I'm saving the starfish." And he said, and she picked one up and she threw it back in the water. And he said, "Well, okay, but why are you doing that?" And she picked one up and put it in the water. And she said, "Because it will live." And then picked one up, put it in the water. And he said, "Well, how? There's thousands of them down this beach. How could you help?" And she picked one up and she threw it in the water. And she said, "I helped that one." And I think that's what I try to do with my clients. I try to help that one, the one that's in front of me, the one that is on calendar this afternoon, the person that's on the phone at 4:00. I try to help each person and value them and their families like they were my family. Like I would pick them up and put them back in the ocean. That's what that poster's about.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Love Thy Lawyer. It's a real privilege to talk to someone who is as respected in the community as you are, who works so hard, and who does so much for the criminal justice community in Alameda County. Thanks for being here. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Louis. It was a real pleasure to talk with you.
That's it for today's episode of Love Thy Lawyer. Many thanks to my guests who have contributed their time and wisdom and make this show possible. Thanks as always to Joel Katz for music, Brian Matheson for technical support, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Louis Goodman.
Louis, I don't like that question. Can we not use that one?
We'll just take it out completely.
Thank you.
Don't even worry about it.